Hello, everyone. This is Cody Lee of BlackCatBooks.org, author of I, the Dragon, Cruel and Beautiful, Rabbit Hole, Lore and Fray, the upcoming Jaw of the Dragon. So today, Nintendo released some financial numbers for the last quarter. This is, the past 3 months, I think, in regard to like how Switch is doing, what we can expect to see in the future. We have a couple of notable announcements. Like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet sold another 2 million units. 22 million sold, way far beyond Elden Ring. You have we got some numbers for Fire Emblem Engage, for Metroid Prime Remastered, from I believe, what else was there? Xenoblade Chronicles 3 got some numbers. People are talking about that. Bayonetta 3 got some numbers. There are, lots of things to talk about when it comes to this kind of thing. But, generally, it's like a pretty good showing. Nintendo's doing very, very well right now. But the thing that I find interesting, and I think I noticed this with the last quarter too, is that people are trying to force a narrative when it comes to these showcases. Specifically, the idea that Tears of the Kingdom will be the last major Switch game ever released, which is not true. We have Pikmin 4 coming confirmed. Metroid Prime 4 is still coming. We have a variety of third-party games. Like Ys 10 is coming out on Switch. That's already been confirmed. So, that's a load of crap right from the get-go. And two, that Switch sales are winding down with no vision with no news of a successor. So basically what the industry is trying to do, what the establishment is trying to do, what the game journals, what the forum posters, what Reset Era, NeoGAF V is trying to do, they're trying to present this narrative as if the Switch is on the way out. They're trying to present this as if Nintendo is in the tail end of the Switch era and they're going to announce the Switch 2 imminently. Right now people are saying, it's been confirmed not to come out in the next year, so until March of 2023. So right now people are saying holiday 2024 is when the earliest we can expect Nintendo hardware, which is kind of weird considering the sheer amount of people saying that Tears of the Kingdom will be the last game ever. Are they going to go an entire year without releasing new Nintendo software? But anyway, the narrative is that Nintendo is in a bad spot. The sales are going down. Games like Fire Emblem Engage and Metroid Prime Remastered are not doing very well. Bayonetta 3 bombed. It's a disaster. Tears of the Kingdom is the only game Nintendo has in the pipeline. Never mind that they can technically announce games whenever. Never mind what happened with Metroid Prime Remastered when it came out of nowhere. Never mind that. Let's just pretend that Nintendo is on the way out. Let's just pretend that Sony is on the verge of driving Nintendo into bankruptcy, just like they did with Xbox. We can't even talk about Xbox when it comes to this kind of thing anymore because, Phil Spencer admitted that Xbox is over the other day. So, it's basically purely a PlayStation thing now. It's those people trying to pretend that Switch is on the way out. And it's ridiculous the way they're doing it, right? Because we're seeing them go after a lot of smaller niche, less popular Nintendo IPs. Fire Emblem Engage, it sold significantly less than Fire Emblem Three Houses. Anyone can tell you why, because of the art style change, the lighthearted tone, the change in direction. It just wasn't as appealing to people as Three Houses was, right? I myself seriously consider not buying Fire Emblem Engage. I did not like the look of it at all, and apparently I was not alone in that. Now, Engage is perfectly serviceable. It's not terrible, but it's still probably going to make my top 10 of the year. But compared to Three Houses, which honestly is going down in history as one of my favorite games of all time, with the best female protagonist of all time, Edelgard von Hellsprung, my waifu, Three Houses is just phenomenal in a lot of ways. A really innovative, fresh take on the strategy RPG genre. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but the sheer amount of time I put into it has really made it into a favorite of mine. Absolute keynote. Engage is nowhere close to that. I totally understand why Engage is not as popular, but it still did fairly well for itself. It sold 1.5 million units. I'm sure it'll hit 2 million at some point. It's not terrible at all, right? That's fine. Metroid Prime Remastered, it only sold 1 million units. It's a remake of a game from the early 2000s. 1 million units is actually extraordinarily good. And I believe, because the quarter ended, I think the quarter actually ended before they actually released the physical copies in April. So I think it might actually be an outdated number. We might actually see it jump a good bit. going into next quarter. But we'll see. We'll see. Anyway, like I actually think 1 million units for Metroid Prime is actually pretty good. Like I was expecting it to be a lot more than that. Like it seemed like it was going to be a lot more than that, but considering all the hype it got. But, I'm satisfied with 1 million units. I think that's perfectly serviceable, fairly successful. Lots of people I know personally bought and played it and enjoyed it. I consider this game one of my all-time favorites now after playing it again. It's legit one of the best remasters I've ever played. Like, fantastic experience. Hopefully Prime 2 and 3 remastered come soon, and we get to enjoy those as well. So, great game in general. Perfectly serviceable. Bayonetta 3. Right? Like, people are saying that, like, Bayonetta 3 was a failure at, like, 1 million units sold, and I just can't, like, help but shake my head and laugh at that. Like, clearly you don't understand how niche this kind of thing actually is. Just because casual action games like Devil May Cry and God of War exist doesn't mean that, like, Bayonetta selling, like, 1 million units to, like, hardcore players is, like, poor. Quite the opposite. This is, like, about the best-selling Bayonetta game ever, right? I think the PS3 version was the best-selling version with like what was it, like 900,000, right? Like at launch, and then of course it got like massive price cuts, and of course that broken version of the game was broken. So like I think Bayonetta 3 actually did pretty well for itself in spite of everything. Like that game had so many problems with it, with like the LGBT community coming after it, and the Helena Taylor thing, and like all the weird controversies, the Devil May Cry like fan base like coming after it all the time. Like I think 1 million units was perfectly fine. I think the franchise is perfectly doing fairly well. I think like Cereza did fairly well for what it was. I think Platinum Games is made a comeback officially. It really, like, looking at these numbers, looking at people like try and talk about them, it really feels as if like the concept of like a smaller game, a AA production is like a completely foreign concept to these people. Like everything has to be AAA. Everything has to do like Grand Theft Auto or COD numbers. Otherwise it's like garbage. I think the only game that anybody was really that like most of these analysts were really praising in this particular financial report was Mario Kart 8 Deluxe for selling as well as it has. I think it sold like another million the past quarter, which is like insane to think about. But it's still getting DLC, and I'm sure like Mario Kart 9 is on the way next year. And another game to look forward to on Switch. Switch still does not have an exclusive Mario Kart game. I feel as if the damage control can't continue. I think like the establishment is relying too much on this idea that the Switch can't compete with the PS5. That's kind of what I'm seeing here. Like looking at people like complaining about these numbers, looking at people complaining about the Switch sold, like that's the point that a lot of these people are saying is that like the Switch will never outsell the PS2. Right, like that is the thing going around right now. They think the Switch is done. It's tired. It's old. It's not going to outsell the greatest video game console of all time, the PS2. And I think that's probably why Sony's kind of stepping up like their anti-Switch like propaganda at the moment. Is like they're trying to kill the Switch before like it topples the PS2. Right, like a console that they will never ever be able to replicate. The PlayStation 2, it's going to lose out to the Switch, and they are terrified of that happening, right? And, they're pulling out all the stops to make it happen. Like, they're doing everything they possibly can. I don't think it's going to work. Like, I think the Switch is on track to selling the PS2. What you have to understand about this quarter is that, like, it ended just before Tears of the Kingdom came out. So Tears of the Kingdom will be selling all throughout like next quarter, and that's going to be driving Switch sales. That's going to be driving a ton of numbers. I imagine a lot of like first-time Switch owners are going to pick up like a lot of other Nintendo games. I'm sure like Mario Bros will, Mario Odyssey will jump in sales. I'm sure like Breath of the Wild will jump in sales. I think Breath of the Wild actually jumped up because of like the upcoming Tears of the Kingdom. I've been seeing a lot of people like playing Breath of the Wild for the first time. Like, there's all this stuff going on. There's all this, like, good content coming to Switch. I don't understand how anyone ever could possibly believe this console is dead. Like, that is a narrative that really should have died back in 2017. The Switch is still going strong. It'll always be continue going strong, and it will blow right past the PS2 and become the best-selling piece of gaming hardware ever made.